I promise you, and any group, and I've talked to a group at IUPUI, which is part Purdue too, that the number one thing that you can do is go work in manufacturing, and go work in manufacturing as a supervisor, and you will understand supply chain in an intrinsic way, because do those parts come to you, and do those parts come to you with the kind of quality and quantity and on time and all those things, that you're the receiver of what the supply chain delivers. So having that experience, trust me, it'll probably be the hardest thing in the world. And if it's not, then you should stay in manufacturing, okay? If it is hard, do it and take it as a really, really great learning experience, because there's no question in my mind, being in manufacturing changed my life for the better, and it was not fun and not easy, but I'm here today because of that experience I had on the plant floor. Okay, so work-life balance. Okay, so my opinion, there's no such thing as work-life balance, and I'll talk to you some more about why I think that. I actually think it's more about work-life choices, all right? And because balance brings out, oh, we can balance this. Balance doesn't exist, male or female. Balance doesn't exist. So if there's one thing I want you to walk away with, is that work-life balance doesn't exist. What there is choices. And I think it's important to really be open about the kind of choices that you want to make in your life and in your career. All right, go. All right, so let's talk about this. Ambition. Well, how ambitious do you want to be? When I was just starting at GM, I was going to be the president of GM. That was my ambition, okay? And and the reality is, if I had really been serious about it, I probably could have achieved it, okay? The reality is that to achieve it, in GM of that time, I had to fit into a culture that was absolutely against who I was as a person, because it was a culture of say yes, and whatever your boss says, you buy in. And I couldn't live in that culture, because I had to say what was right. I was always the person saying, I don't think this is correct. And that hurt my career, but it was great from a life perspective. So, how far do you want to go? You need to think about it, and and by the way, these aren't one-time choices. These are choices that you will make for the rest of your life. And I see some of the white hairs, and I actually would be white hair except I color my hair. We've been there. We get it. So we're just telling you, this is not a one-time choice. And you can go after your career and go crazy for the first 10 years and then suddenly realize, I want to do something else with my life. It's okay. Lifestyle, high dollar, low dollar, all right? If you want a high dollar lifestyle, then it lines up with ambition, but there's some trade-offs, because there's never enough dollars that are enough. So it's just, think about it, okay? Marriage, do you want to be married? Do you want to be single, okay? You want a dual career family, single career family. I mean, all these things, these are choices. And today, while you're single, it's an easy choice. You can be ambitious, you can have a high dollar lifestyle, and if you meet somebody you want to get married, and then you want to have children, it's a whole different thing, okay? All right, the one thing I want you to think about, male and female, this is not a female issue. This is a life issue. Who do you want to raise your children, okay? I believe, there are people who do this, I believe that it is impossible to have a dual career family, career, not job, dual career family and also raise children. I think it's really, really hard to do. It means someone else is going to raise the kids. Because what happens when you get a call and you're in the middle of a big presentation and you get a call from your kid's school that your kid is there puking, okay? You got to go pick them up, all right? And if both of you have dual careers and careers, I'm talking careers, then who's going to go pick up the kid? And before you have kids, you better think about that, because that's important. And male or female, this is not a female issue. This is a family issue, all right? So making a decision that, making a decision to have one person with a career and one person with a job, or both of you with jobs, but you're not going to be super ambitious and go after, these are all good decisions. The point is, make the decision. Think about it now versus letting things happen and then 20 years later you're like, oh, I have so many regrets. Okay? What do you do when the unexpected happens? This is why I think balance doesn't exist. Sick children, sick parents, loss of job. I mean, there is no balance. That's what life is about. Okay, isn't this like a little scary? So you know what? But there's everyone here, we've been through it, okay? All of us older people, we've been through it. So I'm going to just share my decisions. You know what? I made a decision probably about 10 or 15 years. The last thing I wanted to do was be the president of General Motors, because I actually wasn't willing to make the personal sacrifices to do that. And part of why I made that decision is I actually went on a recruiting trip with Rick Wagner, who at one point was the CEO of GM. At that point, he was, I think, the president of GM North America. And we had, it was a private plane. And so we go to the private plane, and it's really cool because you drive into the hangar and they take the car, and I'm like, oh, I like this lifestyle. Okay? And I watched Rick get driven up. He had a driver. He got driven up. He was working the whole time. He got up, got on the plane, and completely focused on us. And the guy is absolutely hilarious, wonderful person. I have so much respect for him. He didn't do a good job in over the last 4 years, and he lost his job for it, but the people who know him really have a lot of respect for him. We did the recruiting trip. The entire time he was completely focused on us. And the minute the plane stopped and the door opened, he got up, he walked out, and he got in the back of the car, and I saw the light go on, and he went back to work. And I said, that's not what I want. That is not what I want for my life. So you have to decide, but when you see what else is out there, recognize ambition isn't everything. So lifestyle, high dollar, low dollar, we decided that we were going to live on one salary. We have 2 kids. They're now 20 and 17. So I have a senior in high school and a junior in college. And my husband, for the first 15 or 16 years, was a stay-at-home dad. And there were things that we sacrificed that we couldn't do because we couldn't afford it. Had he gone out and gotten a job, we could have done a lot more. But then, who was there when the call came, you need to come pick up your kid, they're puking in the bathroom, or worse yet, on the floor. And then you get these things that just happen. When the unexpected happens, what do? I will tell you today, I'm still struggling with that. Last year was a hell of a year for our family. We had 2 deaths, 2 cancers in our immediate 4-person family. I was one of them, all right? And it turned out that we had environmental poisoning in our house. So we were dealing with, all of us were dealing with, we think we're depressed because of all the cancer in the family, and it turns out that we're dealing with environmental poisoning in the house. I mean, this is life. This is what happens. And these are the kinds of things that when you think about it, not as a balance, not as I've got a path and I'm not going to veer from it, but as just another step in life, this is the thing that's important. So I'm going to finish with something kind of cute and funny. So these are the words of wisdom from my husband during his stay-at-home dad time when the kids were little, and he was going to work from home, okay? And he said, it's really hard to work from home when you have small children, because either they're getting in trouble and you need to pay attention to them, or they're just so darn cute that you have to pay attention to them. So I have a picture of my daughter. Okay, and not only does she grab my lipstick, but she does it on my side of the closet, so it makes my clothes a mess, not my husband's clothes. And you know, I'm not even sure whether that's like they're getting in trouble or she's so darn cute, because I think that fits on both. But then a picture of my son, and it's like, I missed those. I only got this experience through the pictures. But this is part of that trade-off. And I will tell you, I don't regret that trade-off, not being there during this whole time. But there's things that you miss when you know, you make a decision either to say, I'm going to have a job or I'm going to go for it. And in today's world, it's easy for the guys to stay home, a lot easier than it was, I mean, 20 years ago when my husband was doing it. I mean, he was on radio stations, he was on TV, he was on newspapers, because that was a big deal, guys staying at home and raising kids. Now it's okay. And the hardest part is accepting that it might be okay for you and it might be okay for you personally, but you still have to deal with society pushing you to say, you know, we spent all this money on your education, a career is the right thing. And I tell you, it's about life trade-offs, and you're at a point today where you can make those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, that was great. So next we will move into our panel discussion. So you can stay on stage. And then I'll invite Jerry back up. In addition to Kelly Antes from Amway. She's a supply chain planner at Amway. Craig Andrews, who is Director of Continuous Improvement at ConAgra Foods. And Mark Burton, Strategic Sourcing Manager at John Deere. So I'll just.
Yeah, they're going to put something in front of it. So we'll do that. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so how this is going to work is we're going to give each of the panelists a minute to introduce themselves, give a little background, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. So get ready with your great questions.
Sure. Hey, how are you? Good. I'm Craig Andrews. I'm with ConAgra Foods. I'm a director of continuous improvement. Graduated from Purdue in 1983 in industrial engineering. Started out of school with R.R. Donnelly & Sons, which is the largest commercial printer in North America, in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Was there about 3 years and then moved out to New York City, where I started up a financial printing operation 2 blocks north of the World Trade Center. Did that for 8 years, got my MBA while I was in New York. Moved to management and other parts of the organization. Eventually was a plant manager in southern Indiana, and then moved back to Crawfordsville. And that's where I was the last 10 years with that. I was with Donnelly. So I was with them for 23 years. So on the operations side. And the 3 of those years I actually got to do some cultural change, leadership, and team building activities around the world, which was an awesome experience. I got to lead that. And I've been at ConAgra Foods for 6 years now, and I've been in the corporate function and continuous improvement. So we're leveraging a TPM type model for our continuous improvement efforts, and I go to different plants and try to help them improve their processes and become leaner. So a little bit about me.
Thanks, Craig. Mark Burton with John Deere. You could do a cut and paste from her presentation and her background with GM and Allison with what I've done at John Deere over the years. I too graduated from Purdue in 1978. So, and I don't color my hair, so I've earned every one of these. Spent a lot of time in John Deere with manufacturing. I was a supervisor on the shop floor for a while. Tremendous experience. United Auto Workers was the union we worked with, and I learned a lot. Spent time in some quality roles. Did one tour of duty at corporate, and went back to a factory in manufacturing management and supply management. Have been at the corporate headquarters now for about 13 years in a couple of different supply management roles, and am anxious to respond to questions you may have about careers and opportunities and that kind of thing. So.
You know me, I'm Jerry Brockma from Amway. I'll hand it over to Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Antis. I am a supervisor for a small group of planners at Amway. The planners do material planning. I've been there for 8 years, and previous to that I worked in supply chain still, but for the automotive industry. And I have had a really great career. I think that I learned a lot in the automotive industry, and I knew that I loved working in the supply chain, but I didn't really have a good fit with the automotive culture. So I started looking for another industry that I could do the same kind of work, and I found Amway. And Amway is a very, I have a lot of alignment with the values that Amway has. And I think that's the one piece of advice that I give to any students that I talk to, is when you're looking at a company, look at their values and see if you are aligned with them. Because I truly believe that if you're not, you will not be happy in your position at that company.
Great, so now we're going to take any questions you guys might have. So who has a question?
I'm Joseph Connor, second year MBA. One thing that you have to go through when you're looking at operations and supply chain is getting buy-in from everybody. So even people who may not really understand why you're trying to introduce new things. So what are some tips you have to really get buy-in from all the employees who may be under you or even your supervisors?
He's going to start that one.
Thanks a lot. So I tell people, I have two new guys who are working for me who are fresh out of school. One's from Purdue through the School of Craner, and the other one went to UT in engineering. And the tools and methodologies we employ work. They're proven. They're kind of no-brainers. It's all about change management and influence management, right? So there's a couple things for me. One is to listen and to take the time to understand the audience and what they're and show that respect. So we talked about respect earlier, I think. And then the other piece is that with them. So what's in it for them? So there needs to be something for them. I mean, making their job easier, making life easier, saving money, whatever it might be. But I think that listening, respecting them, and then trying to get that, selling them, if you will, on what's in it for them. So that's a couple things.
Just be strategic, leave yourself enough time, soak on people. Change works a lot better when you've told them you're going to do it, you told them how you're going to do it, get their input and all that. But if you spring it on people, it's always hard. Doesn't matter if they like it or not. It's still hard if you spring it on people.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that, as a woman of color in the automotive industry, was that even when I had direct supervisory experience, my supervisors were like, well, who are you? You're young, you're black, you're female. And so it actually forced me to develop a skill set of educating versus just saying, I'm the boss, here's what you need to do. So if I wanted to do change, I'd have to talk, I'd have to convince. You can't do it immediately. And then when I got into a position, and realistically, the one position where I had true, what you would call formal authority, was when I was at Allison. So 17 years into my career is when that's how long it took for me to get that formal authority. But you know what? My practice didn't change, because what I learned is by teaching and convincing and getting my staff's buy-in, it would take more time to get agreement, but once they said yes, then they always went forward because we made sure there was enough time to talk about, hey, is there going to be a problem? And if there was going to, here's the goal. Is there going to be a problem? If there's going to be a problem, what are we going to do to deal with that problem? And we always were respected within the greater GM as being able to implement things faster than anybody, but we always took more time to say yes and then less time to actually make it happen.
Excuse me, I'm going to say whenever possible, bring data to the table. Adults will not argue with their own data, so try to use data whenever possible. You will always have changes an emotional issue, right? So you want to try to take the emotion out of it and get into a logical issue, and data can help you do that. You're always going to have those people that we call cave people, right? Does anybody know what cave people are? Citizens against virtually everything. You're always going to have those folks, and even data sometimes won't help you there. But if you can use data, oftentimes you can help get over the hump and win the masses. Once you've won the masses, then the cave people will eventually come on board. Exactly.
What I've learned is that trying to walk in their shoes so that you really truly understand what they're going through goes a long way. I think it helps you to establish credibility. And as you continue working with people, you continue to build relationships and grow that credibility. And then when you do have some sort of change that you suggest, I always recommend have them actually suggest things and create the improvement idea, because you'll go a long ways with that. But if you have a suggestion and you've already established your credibility and you have good relationships with people and they trust you, then they're going to be right with you and leading the change.
Another question?
Hello, this is Sarnaik here, second year MBA student. My question is, today all the decisions are based on analytics and numbers. So in your career, was there a time when you went against a number and made a decision, and what was the outcome as to why would you do that?
Against the numbers. Boy, I just said always use data. Sometimes there's decisions that are just right to do. And I'll use one that's very apropos right now and that's going on right now is the Affordable Health Care Act. I have nothing to do with this at Amway, but I'll share with you what they're doing. Basically, if Amway was to pay the penalty rather than offer health care services, I don't know, it was like $1 million they would save. It's an enormous amount of money that the company would save, but they've already gone on record saying, you know what, that's just not the right thing for us to do. We're not going to pay the penalty. We're going to continue to offer the same program that we always have. So I think it goes back to what Kelly was saying a little minute ago. Your values need to be aligned, and if you're always making decisions just simply on what is the lowest cost, sometimes that's absolutely the right thing to do, but when that lowest cost conflicts with your corporate values or what you stand for as a person or a company, then that's when emotion comes back in, and you have to go with what is right.
Yeah, I mean, when you're running a purchasing organization, there's the hard numbers, and then there's the, is this the right supplier for us? And so I'll give you a couple examples. We were looking at new suppliers in India, and one of our guys went around, and there was someone who was clearly 14 years old or younger who was working in that facility. And my guy walked out. He said, we will not ever knowingly select a supplier that has, oh, well, he's just an intern. He's just, and it's just like, no. I mean, and could they have been a great supplier? Maybe, but we didn't care because that didn't align with our values. We made those same decisions on safety. And I can make a case that going with the highest, the suppliers that have the highest safety ethics long term is going to be your least expensive thing to do. but I would walk in, and if anyone, has anyone ever been in a foundry before? Okay, a couple people, yeah, enough. So, you know, a foundry, think about big hammer, right? And you're just hammering metal and turning it into a new shape. And in the US, it's been a long time that anytime you have something that's coming down, you have two buttons so that you don't accidentally have a hand inside that button. Once, you know, so if you have one button, you would have a hand in there. So you have two buttons before it comes down. So we visited a supplier, and I watched two people, one person who's moving the stuff in and out of the machine, and the other person who's pushing the buttons down. And I told that supplier, we're not going to do business with you. Why? Because you don't have good quality systems. No one's ever gotten hurt. And I said, I don't care. Someone will. It's going to happen. And you know, and so it's those values. So you guys, like, you know, it's taking those values and realizing that those values that you have, whether it's safety, whether it's quality, that's more important than the dollar today, because it's going to give you long-term benefit. All right. So the $1 million that Amway could save, okay, fine. But what happens if some of the people who have healthcare today don't have it, and it impacts their business? They've made a decision. This is who we stand as a business, and that's hard to, it's hard to get data around. And so those values are really important, not just to look at them as they're written on a piece of paper. I can tell you, as a supplier to Caterpillar, Caterpillar lives their values. And even their suppliers who have issues with Caterpillar, but when I have an issue and I say, I don't think this aligns with your values, Caterpillar always fixes it. So there's a lot of companies out there who stick to their values, and they actually mean something.
At John Deere, we call it the how. The what are the business results, but the how you get them is really becoming more important all the time. So I'll just sum it up like the how is important. And sometimes numbers are crafted in a way that it makes decision making very, very difficult. But if you do the right thing, sometimes doing things right is just following the numbers, but doing the right thing, I think Jerry mentioned it, is what's important.
Ditto. No, I think the question was, have you had data and actually ignored it or went counter to the data? So, and I can't think of an example of that, but I think what we're talking about is there's a lot of decisions that have to be made in the absence or there's a lack of data because it's the right thing. So I'm here today at Purdue, and I don't have hard data why this is a good use of my time. But I know it's the right thing, and the company's sponsoring it and saying it's the right thing to do, and we're a Century 21 part, all that stuff. So because we think that's the right thing to do, and you know, most of you won't work for ConAgra Foods in your career, but we still want to share our knowledge and our experience with you. It's the right thing to do. So again, aligning with corporate values and personal values, and some of those decisions that you make of where to spend time, where to invest. Sometimes it's a leap of faith. And you go for it.
Hi, my name is Kashif. I'm a second-year MBA student. My major is in supply chain and operations. I've worked in manufacturing for about 3 years, not as much as you guys, of course. But my question is, I understand the importance of manufacturing to supply chains. That having said, a lot of companies in America are outsourcing their supply chains and even offshoring in some cases, like Dell, HP. On the flip side, Lenovo has a hybrid supply chain strategy, and they've come from down under to beat HP to become one of the, in fact, the single largest PC supplier, not the single largest, but the largest PC supplier of the world. So how do companies in America counter that hybrid supply chain strategy to take the leadership back, and how do they inculcate manufacturing back into their supply chains, or do they continue outsourcing and offshoring in terms of manufacturing to keep that supply chain edge?
When I joined John Deere a few presidential terms ago, in 1978, 77. We were largely a North American and a little bit European manufacturer, but now we manufacture in just about every continent in the world. We say design anywhere, build anywhere. So I'm not sure if I understood your question exactly, but for us, the whole concept of outsourcing, insourcing, offshoring, onshoring is almost moot now, because we have to build equipment that's used by farmers and construction contractors all around the globe. Doesn't matter where. We've got huge growth initiatives in parts of the world where we haven't had them before. So it's such a small planet anymore. It's almost lost its, international purchasing. What's that? I used to have one of my titles at John Deere for a while was regional manager in international purchasing. Really? It's a planet now. International just doesn't, it's companies like GM or Delphi or Ford, Caterpillar. It's lost its meaning almost. It's a regional thing. I don't know if I answered that question.
I mean, it's a tough question, right? Everybody's starting to think about it. 10 years ago, when gas was, $2.50 a gallon, then the cost of logistics was so low that you could chase low-cost country for anything. And what wasn't, so now this gets back to your data question, okay? What wasn't really thought about as you're chasing, here's the lowest piece cost, is, now it's, total cost. How do you measure total cost? This is it's time, it's all of that. It's so complex. So, okay, now I'll give you an example of a decision I made that maybe the data said go somewhere else, but it was clearly the right decision. We had a part, we had two people, it was the rear cover of a transmission. It was about this big around, this tall, made out of aluminum. We'd had all kinds of quality issues, so we were looking to resource it from our existing supplier. And I had someone in the U.S., and it was a 5-hour drive from Indianapolis, and someone from China. And during that time, there was a lot of pressure to, you got to source in China, you got to source in China. And dollar to dollar, the right thing to do was to source in China. Okay, but when you looked at the nuances of this really big thing, all right, maybe it was cheaper in China, but if there was a single quality issue, it would have shut our line down, and it would have shut our line down for days and maybe weeks, not hours. And guess what? We went into production with the U.S. guy. We had a quality problem, and probably the same quality problem that we would have had in China. And as soon as we figured out how to fix it, they had trucks leaving that facility every hour, and it was less than a 4-hour shutdown. All right. If that part had been in China, and you had a plane every hour, the savings. The maybe $1 million annual savings and difference would have been spent just in 1 week to keep our line running. So it's, to say, look at just the data, it's kind of, because you have these things that it's like, what if? Do you get an insurance policy? So I think it's just people are thinking about the cost of that insurance policy now. So, if like Deere, you're building in China, you actually want your suppliers to be in China. If you're building in the U.S., you want a lot of your suppliers to be in the U.S. If you're building in Brazil, you want a lot of your suppliers to be in Brazil. Now, there's a handful of things that you're like, I'm better off buying this on a global basis because they're small enough, the logistics, I want to consolidate it, and this country is best or second best in the world at making this, so I'm going to buy that there. And electronics is one of those. It's pretty cheap to ship. But when you're talking about larger metal stuff, I think there's more of an interest to have that onshore to wherever you're actually assembling the final part, whether it's onshore in the U.S. or let's just say North America, South America, Europe, or somewhere in Asia. And Asia's not Asia, it's India and China and Japan and Korea and all the different countries. I mean, shipping parts from China to India and vice versa, it's like, wow, why would you do that? Because it's really complex logistically. And that's part of the assessment.
Yeah, I agree with everything the panel said so far. I would just add one comment, and the reason Amway has put manufacturing all over the world, in my opinion, is due to one word, and it's speed. We're a consumer's good company. That means that we sell things like makeup, and those type of things change really fast. A color that's hot now will be gone in 3 months. We don't have the luxury of making something in the U.S. and putting it on a boat and floating it over the ocean for 35 days. By the time we do that, the opportunity's gone. So, and that same concept works in the reverse. So if we're going to sell that product in the U.S., it's really advantageous for us to make it here. So I think for us, it's all about speed to market. How fast can we get product in market? There's also a financial advantage of holding less inventory if you can turn it faster. So I think that's one of the key things that drive our globalization.
Yeah, one thing. So how many of you have ever heard of Nutrilite, the brand? Nutrilite? Okay, good. Fair amount. Good. I'm glad to hear that. When it comes to nutrition products, we have a seed to supplement philosophy. So we want to make sure that we're making our nutritional products in the United States for the most part. Now, there are some regions that we do business with where it's required that we manufacture in that particular area. But although it might be less expensive for us to make our nutrition products in a different country, for the most part, they're made right here. And that's a conscious decision that we've made so that we can have the story to go along with the product.
This is Venkat, first year MBA student. Over the past 25 years or so, so how do you see the technology being integrated into the industry?